Main Event Maniacs, presented by the Juice Box.
The main event can make or break a show. It doesn't matter how good the undercard is. If the main event is a stinker, the entire event can be tainted.
Here on Main Event Maniacs, we will revisit some of the most memorable main events in sports entertainment history, good and bad across various promotions and eras of professional wrestling. I'm Jay, and happy to be joined by the Shawn Michaels to my Marty Jannetty, good friend and co-host Brian. Brian, what's up?
Not much, man. I'm really excited about this topic, and the next two episodes we're going to be bringing you as we cover the story.
Yes. We started with what we consider to be the epicenter of the modern main event. You know, all the things that's supposed to be with Hogan and Andre, WrestleMania 3. And we decided for these, hey, let's flash all the way forward to today, more or less, the last couple of years, because, Hogan and Andre are always shown in clips and things, when they talk about great main events and, the biggest ones of all time and stuff. But the story behind that one was incredible. And you and I happen to think that the story, Cody versus Roman, has been some of the best booking and best storyline telling WWE's done in a long time.
In a very long time. I mean, they've had good things here and there, but this is like long-term good storyline, and we haven't had long-term good storylines for quite a while, so it's really nice to have that here. And we've got some opinions on it, which we'll get into, obviously, but this is some of the best work that Triple H and the group have done, and so it just felt right to go from what we would consider really the first modern main event to what we do now. Yeah. And how much that kind of coincides and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a lot of fun to get into. And I mean, gosh, we're just going back a couple of years at this point, but man, it seems like more time has passed. So much has happened.
So much has happened indeed. So let's get into this, Jay. Let's talk about what happened to build this match up. So the story begins with a man, Cody Rhodes, who after 10 years in the WWE decides to bet on himself, leave the big leagues in order to prove he is more than just a mid-card wrestler with a low ceiling. Rhodes would go on to headline indie cards all over the US, have a very successful run in Ring of Honor in New Japan, and a quick stop at TNA Impact Wrestling. With the success Cody had on the independent scene, he and the tag team known as the Young Bucks, along with Kenny Omega, decided to take up a challenge from a longtime wrestling journalist, Dave Meltzer, who stated that an independent wrestling show like Ring of Honor would not be able to sell out a 10,000-seat arena. So with the challenge in hand, Cody and his partners announced that they would present an independent wrestling show under the Ring of Honor name that would take place on September 1st, 2018 at the Sears Center Arena in Chicago, Illinois, and tickets sold out 30 minutes for an attendance of 11,263 people. Jay, that's incredible.
Dude, that is, and you hear this so many times when we talk about any kind of sports figure too. It's a lot of times the NFL, NBA guys, sometimes Major League Baseball guys, they bet on themselves. Okay, I'm going into a contract year, fine. They're going to go out there, test the market, or they go and do like a 1-year deal somewhere and just explode, and all of a sudden, they're the hottest property out there. And you got to give Cody Rhodes credit because, I mean, dude, he was buried on the WWE roster at that point. He was doing mid-card work, if even that. They were running that tired Stardust gimmick, which was a riff off the Goldust, his older brother, and he didn't really want to do it, but it was work, and at some point he was like, man, forget this, I can just go be Cody Rhodes, I'm just going to go be me. And the thing that sometimes is, I don't want to say forgotten, but people just don't maybe think about it as much anymore, is how accomplished an athlete Cody Rhodes was coming up as a high school and college kid. Like, he was a great everything. Every sport he played, was a great wrestler. I mean, everything he did, he won. And so to be buried in this, the biggest promotion at the time just sucked. I mean, and so I give him a lot of credit for saying, forget it, I'm going to go and I'll do the dingy bingo halls, I'll do all the stuff, and I will build a character and a following that gets me back here someday or gets me somewhere else. And as we know, it did lead somewhere very, very interesting.
It does. So with success, Cody, Kenny, and the Young Bucks reach out to the Jacksonville Jaguars president and chief executive officer, Tony Khan, in a way, about starting a new wrestling promotion. That promotion would become All Elite Wrestling, also known as AEW, and it launched on October 2019 on the TNT network, the very network that WCW ran their shows for years.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's wild to think that it's been since 2019 even that AEW's been a thing, right? And
yeah,
because it seems so much newer, but gosh, at this point, and we're recording this in 2024. Did WCW last 5 years on TNT? I mean, it was a short time.
It did. It lasted almost about 5.5 years.
Yeah, in the era that we know, because I grew up watching it on like TBS. It was,
sure.
NWA, but what is the Monday Night Wars version of
the Nitro.
WCW was Nitro and Thunder and all that stuff. That was a very short-lived time.
Yeah, WCW goes back to, it was Saturday night on TBS, right?
Yep.
And that was 605 TBS. That was running, probably became WCW right around, 89-ish? Is that when
Roughly.
Turner bought it? Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at it that way, WCW is on TV longer. But as far as we know, where we go with TNT and Nitro, that started in September, I believe, of 1995. And that would obviously end in May of 2001. No, March of 2001.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 5.5 years. So right now, if AEW keeps going, which, all signs point to it continuing here, they're going to outlast Nitro on TNT, which is kind of crazy.
It's kind of wild. But, again, you get this group of guys who had, Kenny Omega and the Bucks were well known in Japan. They were well known in the independent scene and things. They just had never broken free on the big, promotions. So the fact that they got their chance in this to really build their own was something. And I, gotta say, they put their brand of wrestling in front of people that were looking for something different, and it's worked. And that's been kind of Cody Rhodes' second half of his career was, I'm going to do it a little different. I mean, there's my dad, there's my brother, there's all that stuff, and I'll honor all that history, but I'm going to kind of be my own thing. And the one we see now is definitely his creation.
It is, and I'd say TNT, but they moved it to TBS, obviously, the Dynamite show, but they do still run TNT. So, I mean, they've had a show on TNT now since at least 2019. That's pretty impressive as it is. AEW did find a lot of success on the backs of Rhodes, his partners. Chris Jericho was one of the main first hires that Tony Khan reached out to when he was looking at this as a real promotion. And then a bunch of hot independent wrestlers who helped make up the All-In card that Cody Rhodes and the Bucks put on under the Ring of Honor banner. And then Cody, all of a sudden in February of 2022, this is, 3 years or ish, 2.5 years after the start of the company, Cody announced that he had left AEW, and not long after, he just couldn't come to terms with them, and speculation was he's WWE bound.
Yeah, it was time to come home, right? A lot of things were changing with WWE at that time. We'll talk a little bit of that at the end of this because it's a big moment in history for WWE. But a lot of things were changing in the front office, the way things were getting run, the people who were there, and a lot of the people who have. That Cody Rhodes himself will tell you were very instrumental in this new part of his career. We're starting to have a lot more say in what was going on, and we're talking about Triple H, Bruce Pritchard, some of these other folks that are still pretty prominent in the company today, and they were being brought back into the fold, which was interesting because Pritchard had been out for a while. I mean, you talk about influential people in wrestling, man. Conrad Thompson's going to go in the Wrestling Hall of Fame for resurrecting him and Tony Schiavone's careers and bringing them back into wrestling zeitgeist.
I believe he was put in the Wrestling Hall of Fame already, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yes, the funny thing about that whole thing too is the fact that he had such major beef when he left with Triple H, but not knowing really that reason why, and the fact that Triple H is now the one who really pushed to bring him back in and has been, basically writing his storyline here is kind of wild.
No, it is. But it just goes to show, particularly in the wrestling business, man, given enough time, things come around. I mean, Vince McMahon, for all of his foibles, and he's got plenty of them we can list, was a guy that ultimately never totally slammed the door in your face. Ultimate Warrior is a great example of that. That was a dude that burned him a lot of times, and at the very end the doors, the arms were wide open, brought him back in, and I mean he was on a Raw just weeks before he died, and so I mean that's the wrestling business though, because it is a carnival business. It is a family. You're constantly together, and eventually you're going to cross paths again. And I don't know, Brian, we've known each other a long time. You get a little bit older, sometimes you get mad about something and it goes away a lot quicker because you're like, does it really matter?
Well, I think in Vince's case, he a lot of times will let the bygones be bygones, as long as there's money to be made.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because you look at other people like Bruno Sammartino or Jesse Ventura, those guys were not allowed back anywhere near him until now Vince is gone. But so there's money to be made. You can forget about anything that happened in the past.
And clearly there's money to be made with Cody here because he's gone and done it the really hard way. He did it himself.
And made some money.
Yeah, and made some money. And so, bringing him back in at a time when, I mean, let's face it, the company needed a face to get behind. One that had been proven enough, wasn't brand new, wasn't shiny. They had to have somebody that had a little bit of battle scar to him. And it was a neat move to get him back in. But he's only one part of the story, though, Brian.
That's right. The story also involves Roman Reigns, who, after a massively successful run as a member of The Shield, was having a hard time getting over with the fans after many fumbles by the WWE in pushing Roman into the WWE World title picture. Reigns won and lost his first WWE Championship at Survivor Series in 2015. Roman would continue to be pushed in the WWE and World Championship title pictures before taking a hiatus to battle leukemia in late 2018. He returned in February 2019. Reigns would again take a short hiatus during the COVID pandemic before returning for SummerSlam in August of 2020. Upon returning, Reigns aligned himself with the great Paul Heyman, and he won the Universal Championship on August 30th at the Payback pay-per-view, and then started a feud with Jey Uso, which culminated in a Hell in a Cell where Reigns defeated Uso and forced Jey to refer to him thus forward as the Tribal Chief. Reigns and Jimmy Uso would form a group called the Bloodline, and then he would reignite his feud with Brock Lesnar, which would ultimately end at WrestleMania 38 with Roman defeating Brock and becoming the WWE and Universal Champions at the same time. He would be declared the undisputed champion as a result, and the Bloodline would run through the WWE for the next 2 years.
Yeah, Roman Reigns is a guy that has had a really interesting career in the WWE because I remember when he came in and the Shield with Dean Ambrose, John Moxley, and all the promotions he's in now, and of course Seth Rollins, who I will watch do anything. But I really liked Roman. I thought he had a great look. I thought he had a great moveset. I remember when he played football at Georgia Tech, and he used to just wreck people. And he was that wasn't a great team, but he was a menace. And so you see him, just tackle people. Or that's kind of what he does. And I used to think like, oh man, they need to give him a lot more stuff to do. And I'm like, no, he's really good at just like the things he does, and he got better at telling the psychology. But you're right, Brian. I mean, they tried to push him hard, and people just wouldn't go with it. And the whole time, and I'm not the only one thinking this, I'm not Nostradamus over here, but I'm going, man, this guy seems like he'd be a great heel. And I'll tell you what sold me on that ultimately. He beat The Undertaker and then came out on Raw after that pay-per-view and stood in the ring for 5 minutes, just people just booing him and all that stuff. They're having to hit the dump button, and all he does is raise that mic up and go, "It's my yard now," and throws it down and walks out. I was like, yeah, that's a heel right there. And then when they put him with Paul Heyman, that was gold.
Yeah, I mean, the WWE has a problem with not turning people heel at the right time, and that was really slowly creeping up on Roman Reigns here. They really had to turn him, or they risked losing him forever as a main eventer. So that was well done. Like you said, it was a great moment. It really made people go from booing him to kind of cheering him at that time.
Yeah.
And then with the introduction of Paul Heyman, it just cemented that now he's in the right spot. He's in the right story. And then with the Bloodline coming in, everything else that we have building at this time, it was just perfectly done.
Oh, and look, his entrances became these epic things, and the whole "you will acknowledge me" and "I'm the head of the table" and all the stuff, just the way that they presented him and the way he carried himself, very cocky, but also like not annoying, cocky, you know what I mean? Just like you when he walked in the ring, like you saw it, like the dude dominated people, you know, and he went up against some of the biggest and baddest dudes and would win. So how could you not get on his side storyline wise, right? I mean,
For sure.
I think it's we live in an era where rooting for the heel has become just part of what we do, you know, instead of, you know, just throwing stuff at them like they did back in the old days, right? But, you know, I mean, Ric Flair was the heel for almost all of his career, and people loved him, you know, because he was just over. And that's what got Roman ultimately over, was leaning into just the little amped part of his personality, which, I mean, all these guys will tell you that's ultimately what works. And I think that's what's neat about this is you've got two guys who hit some bumps in their careers along the way. And we should say, like, you know, Cody went through a lot of stuff on his own. He, you know, lost his dad and just all the stuff, and had to like leave all of his, you know, family, you know, business behind and stuff to be able to do his own thing. Roman Reigns beat cancer a couple of times, for goodness sake. So, I mean, this dude is like, these are legit badass dudes anyway. And the fact that they both have hit bumps along the way to get to this point makes their story together very interesting.
It does, absolutely. So let's talk about what brings us right to this match here. So in March of 2022, Cody Rhodes had left AEW, and speculation was that he would be joining WWE. At WrestleMania 38, Cody was the surprise opponent for Seth Rollins, and he came out to an unbelievable ovation from the crowd when that music hit and he showed up for that first time. It was crazy.
Dude, that pop was massive.
It was, and Seth and Cody would feud over the next several months, and it would culminate in a match at Hell in a Cell in June of 2022. Before the match took place, though, Cody suffered a torn pec muscle while working out. He would compete in the match with Seth before leaving to have his pec surgically repaired in one of the most brutally hard to watch Hell in a Cells. And we're talking, you know, Mick Foley being thrown from a cage. This was almost worse, because when he took that coat off and you saw the purple ugliness of that pec, that it was torn, and the fact that he let Seth use that in the match was
beat the stew out of him.
Oh my god. It was almost like Cody was like, all right, kick the shit out of me before I go away for a while, because I want this to be memorable. And that's was a heck of a memorable match between those two. And so just unbelievable to watch, and just watching it, you're just kind of cringing the whole time, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that.
I mean, I can only imagine how much numbing agent was on him at that moment, but it wouldn't have mattered because you're sweating and moving that much. That's just going to blow through your bloodstream quick. You're getting hit with kendo sticks, and I mean, you know, and Seth is not one to lay off. Like, you tell him to lay it in, he's going to lay it in, and they made it look good.
And major props to Cody for being like, yeah, I mean, you have to use this, right? I mean, It's right there. It's obvious. If you don't use this in the match, people are going to just shit on the match. And so they did an awesome job with that.
Yeah, that was one of the better matches on that card, too. So, yeah, that was a great match.
So Cody is now off with a torn pec, getting surgically repaired. He'll be off for several months. And he made his return at the WWE Royal Rumble in 2023. And he would go on to win that match and challenge Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 39. So that's the stage that we're at. Now, we're here now. Cody has now started the story.
Yes, and the first chapter of that story, if you will, I guess of the final parts of the story, is WrestleMania 39. WrestleMania goes Hollywood again. I like to say, because they've done California a few times. This is April 1st and 2nd, 2023, SoFi Stadium, where the Rams and the Chargers and the NFL play, and was home of Super Bowl 56 and countless other events. It's the 6th WrestleMania in California, with number 2, 7, 12, 2000, 21, and 31. And so SoFi is one of those like modern just Taj Mahal stadiums. It can be anything. It's got the retractable roof and stuff like that. And I mean, dude, they spared no expense in making this thing look good. The ramp looks awesome. The lights are great. The pyro's huge. And, you know, open air stadiums, sometimes, you know, the sound can escape. They did a good job of keeping the roof closed enough that there was a little bit of fresh air coming through. There's not going to be any weather problems in California at that point of the year, but to keep the sound in, you know, and stuff like that. So I mean, it was loud as hell. They did a great job of miking it up. Night 1 attendance 67,303. Night 2 67,553. Over 130,000 combined for the two nights. And originally they were going to do this in one night, but like the 3 previous WrestleManias, decided to expand it to 2 nights. Brian, I don't know about you, I like the 2-night split for WrestleMania.
Oh, I'm 100% for that. I think it was 2019 where WrestleMania was like 8 hours long.
Yes.
And that was just way, way too long. And now with the pandemic, they switched it to a 2-night event so they could record, the matches separately from each other, bring in half the talent for one night, half the talent for the next night, so they didn't have too many people in the same room. It was a good move. They repeated that again when they did Tampa, and I think it's, to me, if they're going to go so long on these things and make them as epic as they are, I mean, we used to do 12 matches in 3 hours on WrestleMania. You can't do that now because these guys wrestle such longer matches. So to me, this was the perfect way to go. And now we're looking at SummerSlam in a couple of years going to 2 nights as well, which they're trying to make that into the WrestleMania of the summer, which it kind of always has been, but they're really pushing forward that now. So I like it. I don't like these, 5-hour epic pay-per-views. It's just too long to sit in front of a TV and watch wrestling, and it's too hard to make things, look different all the time, and it gets exhausting. So for me, the 2-night WrestleMania was awesome. Big fan.
Oh no, I'm with you. I'm a huge fan of the split too. It makes all the sense in the world, because that used to be my big complaint, was like, it always fell at a time of the year when I could never do it. And I was like, I need to take the Monday off after WrestleMania. It's like after the Super Bowl. This game goes so long. But unlike the Super Bowl, that game is over with at like 9 o'clock, like 9:30 Eastern. You're done. The NFL is a machine. This is too. And you talk about like the matches go longer. They also have longer breaks between the matches now too.
Oh, yeah.
They do a good 10-minute, sometimes longer break between them, depending on what's been going on in the ring and stuff. And WrestleMania is the biggest thing of the year, right? It's the Daytona 500, it's the Super Bowl, all the stuff we've talked about before. And if you're going to do WrestleMania, you got to have as much on there as you want, right? You want a big card. So why not split it? And why not have a chance to showcase people on a night 1, night 2, do that and mix that up a little bit. I like it too. I think it's a smart move, and I'm curious to see how that'll work for SummerSlam in the future too. But with the Hollywood theme, WWE always likes to lean into that in different ways, and they use their talent to recreate some famous movies. So you had Drew McIntyre reenact the chest wax scene from 40-Year-Old Virgin with like Sheamus and some other folks. That was funny. And then you've got Rhea Ripley portraying Eleven from Stranger Things, which is a little on the nose, even though she's probably 1.5 feet taller than the actress that plays Eleven. Seth Rollins doing the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker, which was cool until Becky Lynch showed up as the Batman, who's not in that movie, but okay, live your dream. And, of course, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, Jimmy J. Uso, and Solo are in a scene, the diner scene, or the dinner scene from Goodfellas, the one where you always see the gif of Ray Liotta laughing and himself silly. That should have been assigned to us, that they're going to do that scene, that Roman probably was going to go over, but maybe not. You never know. But I like those vignettes. I think when WWE does those things, sometimes they can be really corny, they can be really bad, but they've more or less hit them the last few times they tried to do them, and this one in particular was really good.
Yeah, and I remember last time they did Hollywood too, they did the same type of thing, I think with Cena and The Miz and a couple other people, and I like it. I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a fun way to give your wrestlers a little more credence in that fact that, yes, we're entertainers as well, and we can do entertainment things. Back in the day, in the 80s, those guys couldn't act worth crap. I mean, go watch any Hulk Hogan movie and you'll see
as we
it.
have talked about.
Yes, but these guys these days, they a lot of them have good acting ability and good ways to play off each other, and I really enjoy those. I think they're fun. They add to the ambiance of the event and everything else, so I like them.
It's not the only Hollywood influence here, too, Brian. I'm going to kind of posit this out to you. We already talked about Cody being derailed along the way with the torn pec and all that. He was the underdog in so many ways here, right? And it's the kind of story we've seen in something like Rocky. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the first Rocky or haven't seen it in a long time, he doesn't win in that first movie. He goes the distance with Apollo Creed, but he loses the decision. But he wins respect because he was a nobody. He wasn't supposed to be there, and he went the whole way. He gave it everything he had. And Roman was on a tear at the time, the same way Apollo Creed kind of was in that movie, right? And he definitely ramped the juice up for this one, making it personal, and he did it with the best way possible. He used Paul Heyman, and that was the coolest thing about Roman. He didn't even have to be there sometimes. Paul could just come out, and Roman was channeling through it, right? Because Paul can sell anything. And Paul, I love how Paul laid that whole bit on him, on Cody, about, well, you were Dusty's favorite son, but Roman was the son he always wanted. That's only Paul could do, right? And I mean, just dig you deep.
Paul is one of the greatest, probably the greatest manager type people in the history of the business. You got your Heenans and everything else, but Paul he understands the psychology of the business so well that he knows exactly when to hit, where to hit, and what to hit with, that will get not only the crowd to pop, but the story over, the whatever feud's going on over. He's a mastermind on the mic and a mastermind of just that perfect psychology of a person that is needed to really sell something. If you need something sold, you go to Paul Heyman and he will sell that.
Heenan was the insult comic. Jim Cornette was the salesman. Paul Heyman was the assassin. Because Paul Heyman knew something the other two guys didn't really know. No offense to Heenan and Cornette. Paul knew how to book because he had booked. He had done it. And I mean, I remember when he was Paulie Dangerously in WCW, running around with like your mom's cordless phone as if it was a cell phone, and him and Cornette beating the heck out of each other with those things all the time. He understands how to assassinate you with vocabulary. And he's so smart, and he can be so delicious. It's like watching Hannibal Lecter chew somebody up, not literally, but with verbally. And it was the perfect match, like we said. It's the perfect pairing, and it also just makes the odds seem so much more against Cody, right? Because Roman's got him, he's got Heyman, and then he's got the bloodline too. Who's Cody got? Cody's got his history, and he's got his wife who doesn't get involved in things. She sometimes comes to the ring with him. But that's it. Like, at that point, Cody hadn't really built factions, all that kind of stuff. I mean, he had a few dudes he'd hung out with, but I mean, who's going to come to his aid? Definitely not Seth. They'd had a hell of a feud already. So, I mean, he didn't have anybody in his corner, and that's what makes this wild. So we get to the entrance, though, man, and Cody comes down that ramp with that big blue flowing coat, and he's got like these angel wings on the back of it too, but they're down, they're not out. I kept expecting him to pop out, but he's like screaming his own theme song, and really getting into it with the crowd. And you can hear it, man. It's loud, dude. It's long, it's big, it's everything you want in that entrance. And he circles the ring and does all the stuff, right? And I don't know, I love that entrance. It's a contrast to Roman's that we'll talk about in a second, but I really dug Cody's entrance.
Well, you could just see now, in the year's time that he's been there, the amount of this will tell you one thing: an entrance song is so important to a wrestler.
Yes.
So important. You get the right one, and the fans dig it, and the fans love it, and they will look at Seth Rollins' song now. This song for Cody Rhodes just is epic for him, and the fans love watching him come to the ring because they love singing along to that "Whoa" song. It just unbelievable. And he knows how to make an entrance, man. It was pretty epic.
I mean, he should, no lie. Dusty never wanted to not have a good entrance. And even Dustin, back in the day, could make an entrance. Even his Gold Dust. Some of those they're crazy, but there was a lot to it. So, yeah, they can definitely do it. But then Roman comes out, dude. He's got an orchestra on stage playing that just big, bombastic, orchestral, very regal Game of Thrones kind of theme, which is sort of some of his character, this whole head of the table tribal chief situation he's got going. He comes down, both belts. He's got Heyman, he's got Solo, and he's got the big red, all the tribal garb on his neck like he does, and that's it. And Roman shirtless, the black pants. He's just coming down, and he looks so dead serious, and he picks up that mic and he's like, "Acknowledge me," he drops on everybody, and both of them have incredible entrances before they size each other up.
Absolutely. All right, so that brings us here. There's a couple things before we get into this match. The referee for the bout tonight is, I like to call him Rudy Charles, who will always be Rudy Charles to me. That's his TNA name. But Dan Engler is the referee on tonight's match. Michael Cole and Corey Graves are the commentators. And like you said, there's 67,000 plus people watching this event take place.
Yeah, and they haven't released the pay-per-view numbers, but it's millions, watching worldwide on this thing. So it was Well, up until this last year was the biggest WrestleMania of all time. I mean, it had done huge, and this was a huge event. And you and I talked about this off mic, and I wanted to kind of throw it to you. You noticed something that I had just forgotten about that Roman does right before the match starts that was just really cool.
It's amazing. The two of them obviously are in a massive stare down before the match even gets going. And my favorite part is after they finish the stare down, Roman kind of circles around and he starts shaking his head and he says, he ain't got it tonight. He ain't got it. So well done. I loved it. It was perfect. And that's when we get the lockup and everything starts.
Yes, and I love that whole he ain't got it tonight. It's so part of this modern era of Roman Reigns, and it should have always been part of what he did. And I loved lockup, dude. The collar and elbow tie-up, dude, that takes me back to when I grew up. All the Flair Steamboat matches, seeing that, but almost every match seemed to start with that, right? It was the ultimate sort of, we're going to test it off. Like sometimes dudes would do the whole hand grip thing and do the test of strength, and all that stuff. But good old collar and elbow tie-up is just some classic wrestling start.
It is, and I'm glad to see that it's making a comeback. Too many times, people would run at each other and just try to catch them off guard or whatever. It's nice to see a lot of these big type matches in WWE and AEW or wherever start with that collar and elbow tie-up. It's just been a renaissance for that.
I'm going to put a lot of that on the agents that are working right now.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the talent, too, are second, third, sometimes fourth generation wrestlers. Where else did they learn it from? I mean, all the guys that did it. And I'm with you. I'm glad that's making a comeback in these kind of moments. And I think it can be something for an establishing talent, too. Like, it's a great way to just start,
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of ways to start a match, and if it's the third or fourth one you've had with somebody, maybe you don't need to do that anymore. But if it's the big one and you're ready to do this thing, then yeah, it's a great way to get everybody involved.
Yeah, and we see them, change maneuvers on each other. Waist lock, switch over to the other one with the waist lock and all that. And they do a really good job starting this match out to kind of just show we're sizing each other up and we're getting ready to have this fight. Now, for this match, I thought it started pretty slow, which in this case I thought was a good thing. They didn't go high energy right away. In fact, it took about 14 minutes or so into the match before they actually really kicked things into gear. But they really worked the crowd on this and got them like anticipating that, and I thought they did a great job with that.
Yeah, get an early false finish. You got Rhodes gets a big drop kick, almost gets him. Kicks out, Solo gets involved and it gets ejected. So we're like, okay, that's obviously coming back. That's your Chekhov's ejection, for the first act. But that puts Roman up because it distracts Cody long enough for Roman to get in and start doing stuff. And I mean, I love how they're countering each other, early, because Roman goes for the kill quick after that. He goes for the Superman punch. Rhodes puts him in the pedigree, and then they get into where the match really starts. And it's this moment when Rhodes locks that figure four up. And I'm like, oh, now we're really going old school. And then they do Ric Flair loved to do this, let people flip him over and reverse the pressure or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, I like all of that stuff because that's when everything hits high gear. Because this is about a 34-minute match. You're right. It takes about 12 minutes for them to really get going. When they get going, it's a good 8 or 9 minutes straight of just power.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of false finishes here. They just really go in and after each other. For the count, there are 8 false finishes in this match, which I thought was rather interesting. That's a lot, yeah. You had a Cody Cutter, a Crossroads, a Rock Bottom, a Pedigree, a Superman Punch, a Spear, a Guillotine, and then we'll talk about the Stunner Huluva Kick coming up here, but all those were the false finishes to this match before we even get a closer here. But eight false finishes, having the crowd, and the crowd was hot for this. They were just hot.
Oh, big time. And we get the ref bump, but instead of the heel doing it, Reigns moves out of the way and Rhodes kicks the ref. That's pretty huge, man. Like, I think that's neat to see the face do the kick that knocks the ref out.
Oh, completely. And we should see that more often, right?
Yeah, right.
That should more often.
That should
it's
happen
a heel
to the
thing
face.
to do to move out of the way.
Yeah, it is. It's like that should mess the face up. Like, oh God, I didn't mean to hit the ref. Oh my God,
exactly.
How could I do that to Rudy Charles? Or whatever.
Thank you for calling him Rudy Charles. Anyway, you said it. The ref is down. We have a double clothesline. The Usos come out to help Roman here, the bloodline in full force.
Yes.
And who comes out to help Cody?
KO and Sammy come to his defense. They have been feuding with the Usos. They're going back and forth, and man, they come in hot. They blow the Usos out of the ring. And look, I love the Usos. I think they're one of the best tag teams going. They're feud with the New Day. I mean, it was about 5 years where one of them had the title. Like, they were just back and forth, and I'd watch it all day. But KO and Sammy are, again, these dudes will wrestle against and with each other till they're dead. Like, that's just what they're fated to do. But it works, right? It's just, they're just Butch and Sundance, and they're coming in, and I love how they get up on Roman, though, because they get a stunner and a haluva kick, and that's the way Cody's going to do. He's going to get it this way. And something hit me this time watching it, Brian. I was like, wow, this is so neat storytelling, because the face can't win like that. That's how the heel wins. Like, we can't let the face win like that, even though maybe we want it. It's not how it's done, right? And I don't know. It's neat to see that coming down, because you can tell the crowd is just eating it up and just ready for it.
They are, and I think even Cody is like, okay, this is my opportunity, right? As Superman punch misses, and Cody drops him into a bionic elbow instead, and everyone's like, okay, here we are. He hits the crossroads. He hits a second crossroads, and then he signals he's going to do a third one because the crossroads hasn't worked yet. So I need to hit a third one to make sure he's really out. And that's when Heyman's distracting the ref, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes Solo again. He was kicked out of the match, and here he is at the end, hits that spike. Roman goes off the ropes for a super spear, and that's it, guys. Roman wins the match, and everyone in the crowd is just like, what just happened?
The air out of the room. I've seen that happen in like a couple of Super Bowls in my lifetime. Like that Patriots win over the Falcons is one of those where you just saw the whole sideline just drop. I've seen it happen in college football a few times, but this was one of those times in wrestling where everybody was right there on that edge. And then you knew he was going to get screwed because he's backing up, or like, oh no. And Solo comes in with the hoodie on because that's going to disguise that huge dude. And then he spikes him. And I love how Roman, again, that rebound spear has been like his super spear. Like, that's how he took out Undertaker. That's how he took out Lesnar. When he really wants to get you, he gets moving. And I mean, he smashed him too. It was a great tackle. And hearing Cole go to 1, 2, 3, and he's just dying. And we hadn't talked about it yet. Cole and Graves are selling the hell out of this, man.
Absolutely.
And they are doing an incredible job, as they always do, but they really, really did great on this. And you can tell they're just sick. And the shot of the night, though, man, is Cody sitting in the ring, like sitting straight up with this look on his face like, I cannot believe I lost this, right? And Roman's behind him holding up 2 belts with his entourage going up. It's like, wow, it's a very Empire Strikes Back moment. Like, wow, everything just shattered right in front of you.
And then, of course, he's just in disbelief. He gets out and he goes over to his mother and his wife, and he apologizes to them for not being able to finish the story. It was just so well done. I'm actually curious to know if he let them in on it beforehand, or if if they had no clue and they were just like, oh my god, what the hell?
Yeah,
but
I would imagine they probably.
I would hope so. But
I would think if he's going to involve them in the end of it like that. But yeah, I don't know. Man, like, I've heard different wrestlers tell different versions of like who knows what when.
Oh yeah.
And
sometimes they don't want their
it's a
significant others to know
group.
what happens.
Yeah, I mean, because again, there's nothing like natural reaction. And so I just watch and see, and it'll be a show. They know what's going on, so maybe they don't know how it's going to work out. But that'd be fun in a few years if they'll ever tell that. Being Cody Rhodes, he probably will never tell it. So that's probably not his thing. But it was a great moment too, because you just feel the whole crowd. That there's a lot of that crowd that's behind Roman. Let's not get it twisted, right? But there's a lot of people in there that wanted Cody to win, and they're just destroyed. I mean, it's just like your team got to the Super Bowl and they had a lead and they lost.
Your team was Seattle, and then they throw the interception on the 1 yard line instead of running it in with the best running back in the game.
Exactly,
that's the feeling. Oh man,
yes, is that just our team 1 yard away from tying the Rams, and that the greatest Super Bowl ever, probably 99.
Or so, any Minnesota Vikings
playoff
NFC Championship game.
Right.
That's the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's getting up to that moment, and growing up, I was a big, I liked the Knicks and the Supersonics and stuff, and every time they got close, it just never happened. Usually because of some dude named Jordan or friggin' Reggie Miller, and so they kill you. But
sharpshooting.
Yeah, but we can all relate to that moment, right? It's what makes the story so neat here. And we're at the part where we usually do fantasy rebooking, and Brian, what were you thinking going into this? Did you want Cody to win, or would you rebook it where you want it now?
So I was not sold on Cody Rhodes as a main event guy. Not on the Indies, and definitely not in the WWE. So I was all Team Roman on this one because I didn't think Cody deserved to win the WWE title yet, or any of that. Yeah, I just didn't think it was the time for him. And so for me, I was on cloud nine when Roman won that match because I did not want Cody to win. And so, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing on this one. I thought it was the right move for that time, and that Cody just didn't earn that title yet.
I'll go back to what Roman said at the beginning of the match. He ain't got it tonight. And he wasn't wrong. It wasn't the right time. I'm with you. You and I in our wrestling friends text chain where the two people were going Cody, you ain't going over. It ain't time. It's Roman. And we were Team Roman that night. And I was definitely there. I was like, it's not time for Roman to be done yet. He's got way too much stuff going on. This is way too cool. And it's not the way they had set up his title reign. He wasn't going to lose it and then win it back 3 months later. When he was going to drop it, he was going to drop it for a minute. So this wasn't it. And, this would allow him to get a little bit further down the road on that. And I just thought business-wise it made sense, but also I'm with you. I thought Cody Rhodes had done a great job of reinventing himself, but I didn't think he had done enough to say, I can be the guy. I can be the quarterback, if you will.
No, and to me, he was an upper mid-card guy still. He hadn't earned his stripes in the WWE. Yet I get that he was there for so long, but again, he wasn't there in that scene. And for me to put the belt on him would have been the wrong move. And I think it would have probably killed his character a little more if they had gone that way. And as we see it over the next year, I think they did a great job of really turning him into someone you think could be the main guy. But I don't think he was there yet.
Sylvester Stallone has said before that people tried to convince him, the producers and all these other people in the studio said Rocky should win that fight. At the end of the original Rocky, he said, no, that's not the point. He said he's just winning his own self-respect. And it's not, he's just fighting for respect. He doesn't care if he wins or loses the fight. And he was right about that, and he also said, and there would be no Rocky franchise if he had won that fight, because once you win, what do? You got to make him fall again. And you don't want to see that right after. So, that's another, story for another day. But yeah, I mean, for this, it was the right moment. Roman needed to stay on top. He's still the top guy. And a lot of things changed. I mean, immediately after this, Brian, in the aftermath, the WWE sale to Endeavor, the parent company for UFC, was officially announced the day after WrestleMania. Now, rumors had been circulating as early as January. I listened to this great podcast on Spotify. It's part of the Ringer Network. It's called The Town with Matt Bellamy. He was like an entertainment lawyer, and he edited Variety for years. He's a Hollywood insider, but he talks a lot about entertainment stuff as it's happening. And he has had Nick Khan on and Triple H, and a lot of other people. And when this was going on, all the Vince McMahon news was up and all this, and he was going what's going on with the sale of this? And so I had heard, rumors about this, and I thought, wow, what would it be if UFC and WWE were the same company? And as we, now know, it brought an end to the McMahon family era of ownership, and not long after that, Vince would be completely gone from the company, and it's, in a different set of people now running the thing. So it was a major, major change for the company, which changes the storylines going forward too.
Yeah, not necessarily right away. It was interesting when this happened. The thought was, will Vince still have control, right? And Ari came out right away and said, Vince is in charge still, and we have good relationship with Vince, and we think he's the one to lead this company. And so he was still the head of the board of directors and all that stuff. And for a long time, until certain things came out about him, and he was forced to resign once and then came back, and he's forced to resign twice. But it was a huge deal. The McMahons, in one way or another, have owned the WWE since the 30s. With Jess McMahon, he started with the boxing. He did a couple wrestling events, did some concert promotions, and then his father, Vince Sr., really took over the business from Jess and turned it into what we know as Capital Sports, which then became Titan Sports, which then became the WWE and all that stuff. And so this has been in the family for, almost 100 years. And then to see Vince everyone thought that this was going to get passed on to Shane or Stephanie at some point, right?
Yeah.
And he completely undercut them and just
every
sold
way
the company
possible.
every way possible. Sold that company out from under them, which I thought was just a dick move myself. But, whatever. It seems to be working out now. But at the time, it was just like, wow, I cannot believe he did that. Like, that's his own kid's future that he just sold off. Now, they're rich beyond belief, so let's not cry for them at all. But just kind of like, wow, when you think that this is going to get passed on to and that time it was Stephanie and Triple H to carry it on. He must really have some beef with one of those two in order to not say, hey, here, I'll sell you my controlling interest in the company. You can now own it. Nope.
It would be like the Fords selling to somebody not named Ford, and like completely bypassing it. But you're not wrong. I mean, it's a big deal that they're no longer the head family of the WWE after this point. And, things would continue on. Roman's 2 title belts would ultimately be combined into just one belt. They called him the undisputed champion, I think Universal champion, and all that. So that was going to become one belt. Cody would continue to go on. He would win the next Royal Rumble, would get his seeming rematch with Reigns, but how we ultimately get there, as we know, is another story for another podcast and another day.
Absolutely. And it's going to be an exciting one, Jay. I'm excited to talk about the story continues, I guess we can call it, in our next episode.
Absolutely. In the next chapter. Of course, folks, thank you for joining us for this episode of Main Event Maniacs here on the Juice Box. Big shout out to our buddy Juice Springsteen for giving us this platform and a place to talk about some of our favorite main events throughout the time. You'll always find this show in this feed, of course. Feel free to connect with Juice on Twitter X at Juicy Steen, on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet, and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Juicy Steen as well. Of course, this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find it. If there's a possibility to leave a review, please do so. It helps other people find the show, and we thank you for your support.
And if you want to follow Jay or I, you can follow us on X. I'm at Brian Thomas 878, and he's at JRan here. Let us know what you think of the show. Give us some ideas, what kind of main events you want to see us talk about in the future. We're always open to look for something else to go with.
Absolutely. So again, until next time, for Brian, I'm Jay. This has been your main event.
That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.